Kiss Meets Podcast 4K, The Second Coming. I'm one of your hosts, Savannah Royster.
And I'm also one of your hosts, Eli Clausen.
I am Luke Neely.
All right, we hope everyone had a great Merry Christmas this year. I don't know. I don't think any of us got any Kiss-related gifts, did we? But did you? No, I didn't. I need to get the new calendar, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we hope y'all had a great Christmas. Let us know some of your favorite Kiss gifts that you may have gotten, and share some photos on the page. So this week is, of course, the Vinnie Vincent Invasion album. Good stuff. I mean, pretty much, if you're a Kiss fan, you know this album. Vinnie's first solo endeavor, I guess, after Kiss. Pretty interesting stuff. So I don't know. Was this? How about you guys? Was this the first time you've ever heard the entire album, or was it a revisit?
Nope, first time.
Okay.
First time.
Cool. So let's just go ahead and get into our other things as usual. We have, as always, comments and then our weekly polls.
Okie dokie. Just around here and getting everything put together. Here we are, back on the 7th Star episode, which was a few weeks ago now. We did get a comment from Rain in Adamstown. Good to hear from you, man.
Yeah.
Nice long comment here. He did give us his rankings for 7th Star. I'm just going to read the whole comment because he's got notes on a lot of songs here. He says, like this episode, in the last 2 weeks I have heard the album 3 times and I must say I really like it. No Stranger to Love is one ballad too much, but not a bad song. Mostly I listen to it in its entirety. I give it a 7.5. Hughes is a very good singer, maybe not perfect for this style. Saw him last summer with a Purple set and he still hits all the high notes.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tony Martin fits this kind of heavy music a little bit better. His rankings were No Stranger to Love, this is from worst to best. No Stranger to Love, In Memory, which he notes, but, I think this is very good, only rate it so low because it's so short. In for the Kill, also very good, only problem is that Hughes isn't a heavy metal singer, but he doesn't destroy the song. Turn to Stone, like you said, this is a great song, same very small problems as with In for the Kill. Angry Heart, here we go, Purple style and the voice fits perfectly. Heart Like a Wheel, man, the solos are incredibly good. From Heaven to Hell on, this must be another guitar player. Not the one who could barely hold his guitar before. Love the vocals on this one. That's shots fired on Black Sabbath right there.
Oh, did you say fart like a wheel?
Fart Like a Wheel, yeah. That's 7th Star. It doesn't get any better. And then his number 1 was Danger Zone. He says, for me, Iommi's best rhythm guitar work of all time. Listen to the right and left channel. Played slightly different and not perfectly on point, but it creates a brilliant riff. The art of heavy metal riffing. When he recorded this song, the muse kissed him.
I think he's mixing that up with his with Kenny Loggins. That's really what he meant. Is his favorite song was the Kenny Loggins version.
Exactly. No better riff has ever been written than da 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 da. He also says his favorite Sabbath albums are, from best to worst, Born Again, Headless Cross, and Heaven and Hell. He notes, as I said before, the Ozzy years are nothing for me, but Speak of the Devil is great. Again,
that's a big statement, man. I mean, there's not a lot of people that you hear name their top 3 Sabbath songs, and not one of them is an Ozzy era Sabbath albums. I mean, interesting, man. I dig it, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I don't specifically dislike Ozzy's voice, but it's never really hit me the way it seems to hit most people. So I've always been a big Dio and Tony Martin guy as far as Sabbath goes.
Yeah. With Sabbath, I mean, yeah, Ozzy's voice is kind of part of the sound and the signature, but to me, it's more so the music, of course. And I mean, you just can't deny a lot of those classic riffs and Bill Ward's drumming and all that. Geezer, his bass lines. I mean, a lot of that stuff. And I'm not there's a lot of that stuff that isn't the songs that you hear all the time on the radio or whatever that are kind of the sleeper songs on a lot of those albums that, man, just some killer stuff,
Yep.
I've also got a couple of comments here on the last episode, Nasty Nasty. We do have a comment from Just Add Vinyl, familiar name there.
Corey.
Corey says, yes, upload all the previous episodes.
No.
Only because you said so, we're not going to.
Yes. Yes, I am going to have to start working on that. It does seem like that's the general consensus now. I'm going to have to definitely upgrade our Spreaker, though, to be able to do that. But I will definitely do that because we're going to have to do that regardless to get all these episodes up for you. So I will start that process.
Nice.
Next year.
Yes. Long time to wait. I've also got a comment from Rain on this video who says 4 fantastic songs and a couple for the trash can. They cannot manage to make a great album from start to finish. They don't tour Europe, but I'm sure if they play the best 3 or 4 songs from every album, it's a fantastic set. Did you see them live in their prime or in the last years? That's a band I would like to see live on a bill of a summer festival. I give Nasty a 5.5. Note the best 4 songs are an 8 for me. He did give us his top 4, which were from worst to best, Nasty Nasty, 12 O'Clock High, Do You Do What You Want to Do, which he notes Power, and Kiss of Death. What a great riff, he notes. He also says Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all.
Same to you, man. No, I never did get the chance to see that band live.
Would be neat, especially if one of these Kiss expos. Tommy Thayer's at these expos pretty commonly. It'd be neat if they had a little black and blue set.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even on the cruise or something, but definitely the expos. I mean, hell, they had a Fraley's Comet reunion basically just a few years ago. So I mean, why not?
Did get to see that. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was cool to experience.
Okay, moving over to our Facebook. I just jumped over here and Rabbles left us a Facebook comment. That's pretty funny. I got Steve and Rochelle's rankings. Here we are. Okay, so Steve and Rochelle McGowan's rankings for Vinnie Vincent Invasion. We've got Steve gave this album an 8 out of 10. His top 3 were Twisted, Back on the Streets, and Boys Are Gonna Rock. And then Rochelle gave this album a 3 out of 10. Her top 3, Baby O.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so our polls, which is the only thing we like to talk about on this show, is our polls.
Oh!
Except they're kind of short though for some reason.
Yeah, it is weird. It's really cold out. So.
Mine's basically non-existent.
Oh man, this is good to see. I'm telling you, it's good to see this growing.
Our polls are growing. Yes.
I know, right? Today's polls have only been up for a couple hours, and the one I'm looking at already has 86 votes on it. So
the poll has been up a couple of hours.
Oh, so it's up longer than 4. Somebody call a doctor.
Our polls are on Viagra.
All right, so last week's polls. Let me pull up here. Now I can't.
I was surprised to see how close one of them was.
Yeah, lots of this has been very interesting. We had our first match of last week. We got to do 2 weeks, right? Because we.
That is true.
Right, so we've actually got 6 matches to talk about. So our first match was a 2-timer versus Out of This World. 2-timer just crushed.
I figured it would, but like I said on the last episode, man, I had to go with Out of This World. I just had to give it the edge.
It's a very underrated song, but it's so hard for modern Kiss to beat classic Kiss.
Right.
We also had Journey of 1,000 Years versus Hard Times, and of course Hard Times destroyed that.
Didn't someone make a comment on that one? I thought I saw a comment about that.
Yeah, there was a few, actually quite a few comments on there, people talking about how great of a song Journey of 1,000 Years is, which is cool. Because we have been calling for that. If you're in the minority in your votes, we want to know what do you like.
Yeah.
Especially when it's something like that where you've got a song people usually like versus a song people usually don't like.
Yeah.
If you like that one, people usually don't.
Absolutely.
We also had I've Had Enough Into the Fire versus No No No. I was a bit surprised to see I've Had Enough just absolutely destroy. Now, to be fair, I also voted for I've Had Enough, but I figured Bruce's solo on No 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 would be enough to give it a fighting chance at least.
Yeah, I just think overall it came down to being more so Animalize, more than the actual song. A lot of people definitely lean towards that more than the Crazy Nights.
That's one of my favorite Kiss songs ever.
I've had
enough.
Yeah. That's what I would name my compilation.
That's not doesn't speak very well to your love for Kiss.
It would be called Into the Fire, so
I was gonna say that's better than here's my compilation, I've Had Enough.
yeah. It was called the second half of that song.
I thought you was gonna say you were gonna name your kid that. I've had enough Into the Fire. What a weird name.
I'll probably be saying the whole entire time.
We'll just call him Ive.
Yeah, So the real surprising one, I think, was our first match from this past week, which was Kiss the Girl Goodbye versus Danger Us.
Yeah.
Now, Danger Us won, but it was really close. And that's strange to me. Danger Us is one of my personal favorites from Sonic Boom, so I was very surprised to see a Peter song just about beat it.
I think I went with the Peter song.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. We also had Ozone versus All Hell's Breaking Loose.
That was a tough one.
Definitely. All Hell's Breaking Loose won there. Again, it was fairly close. We did have a couple of people comment on that, too, that All Hell's Breaking Loose is their favorite Kiss song of all time. So that's a cool little tidbit. We also, those of us that were at the Indianapolis Kiss Expo a couple of years ago, remember what Michael James Jackson thinks of that song.
Oh, yes.
One of the greatest reactions in the history. We've urged before, if you don't know what we're talking about, go look that up on YouTube. It's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final match for last week was Reason to Live versus All for the Glory, which, of course, Reason to Live crushed that one. I found that one a little bit interesting. Another one of those that it's two songs you don't really hear people talk about very much.
Exactly.
To see that was interesting. And then, of course, we've got the polls that were just posted today. Go check out our Facebook and tell us your input on that. The three matches are 100,000 Years versus True Confessions, Beth versus Rip It Out. Good luck picking on that one. And Say Yeah versus Rock Bottom. Very interesting. It was Rabble, our good friend Rabble, who commented on 100,000 Years versus True Confessions, saying, OMG, this matchup is the joke of the day.
Because it's obviously True Confessions by a landslide, right?
Here. I quit the podcast if that one doesn't win.
I'll tell you what, Beth and Ozone was kind of hard because hard pull because God, I mean, both are great songs, and then I'm kind of thinking in my head like, well, technically Beth was the bigger hit, more, but it's not about that. It's about the best. So yeah.
That's I think that's the big one for the moment.
The big poll.
Yeah, nice big poll there. We do have another. The three I'm looking at for next week are going to be another pretty interesting. I think there's one that's going to be a landslide, I can tell, but the other is I'll be curious.
Did you guys see the clip from one of the recent Kiss shows in Japan where they had I'm horrible that I forget the dude's name. He's a drummer for that band. I forget. And he got up and played Rock and Roll All Night with Kiss at the show.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, to me, that's kind of almost like a first. I mean, there's not a lot of times in history that they've had someone come on stage and play a song with them, and especially on drums. That's probably the first time. it was pretty cool, man. Like, especially of all songs, Rock and Roll All Night, the last song of the show and all the, the big pyro and everything that goes off, and here's this dude sitting in on drums, and Eric's still kind of standing behind him by the floor tom, kind of beating on the floor tom and a couple cymbals, and it's cool because when the drum riser goes up at the end, like Eric's still standing there with him, and it was just kind of cool, man. It was like definitely a rare Kiss moment, and it's pretty cool. I feel horrible. I'm forgetting the dude's name. I think the dude was actually on the Kiss My Ass album too. Did that version of Black Diamond, and he's in one of those Japanese bands. But it's on YouTube. Check it out. Thought that was a pretty cool little moment. Sounded good too.
Well, we also, I think, since the last podcast, we passed Vinnie Vincent's birthday or Christmas bash, not his birthday bash, his Christmas party.
Oh yeah.
Which Mike Brunn posted a lot of really good videos, interviews and stuff about that I watched. Unfortunately, Vinny did ask that no videos of him playing be posted, which, it makes sense. I would have loved to have seen some, and I'm sure everybody else would have too, but, from an artist standpoint, it makes sense. If you want to see me play, come see me play.
Right. And, a lot of people were saying, like, hey, all the critics were wrong. He could still shred. So it definitely made me like want to see footage too, but I'm sure there isn't any out there. And hey, if the chance ever comes around, I'll be there. Or if they can get him to come to the expo or whatever. I mean, and if he's able to play, I'll definitely be ready to check it out. And yeah, check out Mike Brunn's channel. Like Luke said, a lot of great content. He actually did a sit-down interview with Vinny. Vinny did wear the makeup at points. And he was back to wearing the actual ankh instead of just that, cross or whatever he had done recently. So yeah, it was pretty interesting. So seemed like it was a pretty good time, man. Like, they had a lot of, Vinny memorabilia there, a lot of his, different boots from all the years. And, he had this big old, sheet that a fan had brought to the Creature show where they painted, Kiss on it and the faces. And he said he kept all that kind of stuff all these years. He said he's got a bunch of that kind of stuff at home. And, it makes me curious to see what kind of stuff he hung on to, especially from that Creatures era. Yeah. And, so yeah, check it out. Good stuff. And, I hope they can get him to come to the expo, or I know sometimes he does random, like, horror conventions, things like that, where they mix it up. So some of those come around here. Maybe they can get him to come to one of those if he doesn't come to the Kiss Expo. But would definitely like to meet him still, and would definitely love to see him perform, because I'd really like to hear what he can still do in person. So
I did forget to mention the Reigns votes didn't really, they didn't change our top three in Nasty Nasty. They did change around 7-star a little bit, but both of those albums now have a 5.7 out of 10 average overall, which is handy dandy there. So we still got 7-star in the number 1 spot. Danger Zone jumped up to number 2, and we also got Turn to Stone, which is now in 3rd place. It was in 2nd place, and then In for the Kill, which we had in 3rd place, got knocked out of the top 3 entirely. So,
good
stuff.
Wow. All right.
That's time for some album info.
Alrighty. I just gotta say, I love how on the inner sleeve it says, "Made to be played at maximum volume."
Oh, that's cool how it gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So this is Vinnie Vincent Invasion, of course, the debut studio album by the band of the same name, featuring Vinnie Vincent. This was released August 2nd, 1986. I think a lot of the albums we have done recently have all been 1986. That was a hell of a...
Yeah. That is like especially August, that's like literally within weeks of me starting kindergarten. Like, it's just crazy to think that this was coming out at that time.
Yeah. This, you know what? I didn't see this until just now. This was recorded at Baby O Recorders in Hollywood, California.
Yeah, I noticed that on the inner sleeve, and I was like, really?
This was produced by Vinnie Vincent and Dana Strum, who was the bass player. 2 singles here, Boys Are Gonna Rock and Back on the Streets. There is a music video for Boys Are Gonna Rock that is on YouTube. I was going to watch that and I forgot. Interestingly, the vocalist in that video is Mark Slaughter, not Robert Fleischman, who is the one actually singing on this album. Mark had to lip sync the Fleischman's vocals, and then Mark Slaughter was the vocalist on the next album. Yeah,
if I remember, because by the way, like, check out Bobby Rock's book, The Drummer from Vinnie Vincent Invasion. He was at one of the expos a couple years ago. Had a chance to meet him. Really cool guy. Great Q&A session. So again, I was a little unsure what to expect with the book, but I figured, hey, I'll check it out, and it was a great read. All kinds of great insight to the Vinnie Vincent Invasion and everything else, and but yeah, he kind of discusses all that stuff about how Fleischman was out of the band that quick before they even started filming the video, and he had the pink symbol with him from the video, and was letting people hold it and everything, and so yeah, just throwing that in there. Real cool guy. Just wanted to say too, I noticed that it says they recorded it from January to March of '86. So I mean, it only took them 5 months to get the thing done and put out. That's kind of impressive.
Sure.
From the time they finished recording. I mean, wow.
Yeah. Well, it says they apparently claimed that they just went in and played. Apparently, the liner notes say that there were no pedals, outboard gear, or synthesizers used. Funnily, Wikipedia says the liner notes state somewhat implausibly that no pedals, outboard gear, or synthesizers were used.
Well, see, according to Bobby Rock, though, he had to go in and completely redo his entire drum tracks for every song. I can't remember the exact story now, but he was saying something about when he did the first versions of them, he loved them. They sounded amazing. Vinny was being very picky, didn't like certain things about them. He was nitpicking every little tiny thing, and they ended up, again, read the book. He tells all that story, but it's something so I couldn't imagine because he was living, I think he was living in Texas at the time still, and he traveled back and forth to California, so then he had to turn around and go all the way back, and it sounded like nothing but hell, but thankfully I guess it kind of turned out for the better for him. But yeah, just throwing that in there too.
I remember him talking about that in his Q&A too, how they were it was to the point where he would do a take, and if it was not absolutely perfect to the metronome, then he would make him do it again.
Yeah, and I think he even said they had like a little monitor, because they just like put him in this room that I want to say it was like in a basement or maybe like a theater, and it was just like this dark room by himself, and I think they put a monitor in there so they can communicate back and forth, and just crazy nonsense. But again, read the book. I mean, read the full story about it. It's a very interesting section.
Another weird thing Wikipedia says is that Back on the Streets was pretty commonly played by Ace Frehley during his early shows with Frehley's Comet.
Really?
Apparently they never recorded it, but this song was written by Vinny. This was the only one credited for writing the song, so that's kind of an interesting nod by Ace.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Also, it makes me wish I had been born much earlier than I was, because the tour, they opened for Alice Cooper in '86 and then Iron Maiden in '87.
Wow.
Record. That would have been absolutely wild to see Vinnie Vincent Invasion tour this album and then Iron Maiden doing Somewhere in Time.
Oh, man.
This album also appears on a lot of like 100 greatest heavy metal albums of all time. Those sort of polls in big magazines like Kerrang. The Fargo Rock City journalist actually made it his second greatest heavy metal album of all time.
Wow.
Only Appetite for Destruction beating it. which is pretty wild.
I mean, I love Appetite, but I wouldn't call it metal per se, and especially the best metal over some of that stuff that you could think of. I mean, man.
Of course, this is the personnel. It's just Robert Fleischman on vocals, Vinnie on guitar and vocals, Dana Strum on bass and vocals, and then Bobby Rock on drums. Looking at the writing credits is pretty interesting. Of the 10 songs, 7 are only Vinnie.
Yeah.
And you got 2 writing credits from Robert Fleischman and Vinnie, and then 1 from a guy named Richard Friedman on Vinnie with Back on the Streets. But, so Vinnie really went all out with this. Oh, weird thing, I don't know if this is general or if it's just this page. You know how each person's name is lit up on Wikipedia so you can go visit their Wikipedia?
Yeah.
If you hover over Bobby Rock's, it takes you to Lita Ford's page instead of his.
They must not have made a individual page for him.
Yeah, that's weird. Very weird.
Yeah, a lot of people may know, but Bobby's been playing with Lita now for however many years, 10, 12 years, something like that. So yeah, he's still out there doing his thing. Okay. So of course, the album starts off, everyone knows, is Boys Are Gonna Rock. The big hit. The song everyone probably knows when they think Vinnie Vincent Invasion. So this is my number 2. You know, I never really thought about it until listening to it again this another time, but you know, once the riff comes in, and especially when the full band kicks in, you know, the riff and everything, it kind of reminds me of I Don't Know by Ozzy. You can definitely hear that Randy Rhoads influence there with Vinnie, and so, you know, obviously this is a great album opener. Great sounding production too. Fleischman's vocals are amazing. You know, it was a shame that they were butting heads so much, and you know, he was, again, like we said, out of the group before they even filmed a music video. So, but thankfully, as we know, in recent years, him and Vinnie had pretty much reconciled. I know they kind of had a few more rocks along the way, but anyway. So yeah, that's my number 2. You know, probably the most famous Vinnie Vincent Invasion song. So definitely a cool opener, and again, a very cool music video.
Yeah, this one was my number 4. I again, like what you said, I felt like it was a strong way to open the album. It came in strong. It wasn't one of those that when it started, it kind of took a minute to kind of get going.
Right.
It's pretty strong from the very beginning. The background vocals, though, weren't quite there for me. Like, they weren't quite powerful enough, I don't think. I liked them, but I would have liked them better if they would have been more, like, in your face.
Yeah.
He was so powerful with his vocals, you know, and his voice is just, it's amazing. And then I just kind of felt like the background vocals were kind of just, you know, buried back in there instead of, you know, up there with him where I would have liked to have seen them and heard them. That bass tone, I love that. And for once, you like hearing an album from that era and you can actually hear the bass. Like, you don't hear that very often. It just didn't happen very often. And even now, it's unheard of to like hear clearly that there's bass in the songs. I love the tone of that bass. It was great. And I thought it was cool that the very first song ended with a solo.
Right.
Like, even though it faded out with that solo, and that was really cool, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. Like the full sound of everything. I mean, even the drums, because a lot of that stuff at that time just sounded so thin. Like even the drum sound would just sound so thin, or you know, too much reverb in it and whatnot. But
yeah, if you want to hear bass on your album, you let the bass player produce it. That's what happens.
Oh, well, yeah. That's true.
Yeah, this is my number 3. Just from the opening notes, getting a strong Lick It Up vibe. You can definitely tell this is Vinnie Vincent. The riff even, it clearly wasn't a ripoff, but it brings to mind Not for the Innocent even, specifically, that descending guitar note thing. I did Note here that I was a little on the fence about Fleischman's vocals. I was hoping that he didn't stay up in the stratosphere high register for the whole album. But I also noted that, of course, as I was suspecting, the guitar work is just frickin' mind-blowing.
And you gotta love that opening line. Well, I'm a sex shooter, not a six shooter, a sex shooter. What is that?
Yes.
All right. Speaking of that, next track is "Shoot You Full of Love." This is.
They were setting up for this one.
Yeah, exactly. This is my number 5. This one was kind of straightforward to me. But I do have to say the solo is probably one of the best solos I've heard Vinnie ever play. And also after the solo section, I like how he's still kind of doing a little bit of soloing stuff over the lyrics, or after the phrase. And then towards the end, it's like we get this part where everything just drops. Fleischman kind of has this little bit of a vocal solo carrying out a long note, and that had me raising my eyebrows. Just like I'm like staring at the record, like wow, like I don't know why, but I'm like staring at the record itself as if I'm watching him or something. But I'm just kind of like whoa, like killer. So and with all the soloing that's on this album, let alone the stuff Vinnie did, in Kiss, I mean, to say that this, to me, was maybe the best Vinnie solo I've ever heard, I mean, that's a lot to go against.
Yeah, this one was my number 6. I said the solo was pretty cool. Like, it was in your face, which is always nice. It didn't blend in. It stood out. But it did sound a lot like the first song to me. There wasn't really a whole lot of difference, except the solo was really the only thing that kind of stood out to me. And it was another one that ended with a solo ending, and it faded out. And I was like, I wish they would have kind of maybe just ended that one instead of just doing the same thing they did the first time. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of the theme of the album.
Yes.
Especially the first half, yeah.
Yes, it was, and I was kind of disappointed by that, because, I mean, I don't really mind it if it fades out, but it's like when every song does it, and they all end the same way. It's like, come on. Change it up a bit.
Yeah.
That was pretty much all I had for that one.
Yep. Number 2 for me on this one. Interesting opening riff, and then just classic 80s. This is a good song to point someone to if for some reason they've never heard kind of the 80s shred hair metal sort of stuff. Yeah. What did that stuff sound like? This song, I think, is a good one to point them at. The vibe, the 80s vibe is just spot on. And then I noticed in this one, and it's true for the first song and it's true for the whole album, but I noticed it right here. Just like I was saying, if you want to hear the bass, let the bass player produce the album. If you want to hear the guitar solos, let the guitarist produce the album, because holy crap, the Vinnie solos are so loud.
Yeah.
They're so much louder than everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if the guitar player doesn't produce it, just let him be Vinnie Vincent and insist on it nonstop in the studio.
I don't think that solo's loud enough.
It's my name on it.
He doesn't even say anything. He just reaches past them and is like, turns it up, like, yeah.
And then he just stares at him with a blank stare while he's doing it, like.
No, it's on a tape loop, just like the end of this album. He didn't even stop it. Solo's not loud enough. Solo's not loud enough. Solo's not loud enough. Solo's not loud enough. They're playing.
Introduce yourself like that the next time. And solo's not loud enough.
Next up is No Substitute. This was my number 9. Didn't care much for this one at all. I guess it's kind of the ballad on the album. But to say one thing decent about it, I did enjoy the vocal harmonies during the chorus. That's about it on this track. But, kind of going into what we were saying on the last song, you know, a lot of people would probably be quick to jump and say that all this is hair metal, you know, just like saying Black and Blue is glam metal.
Right.
But really, it's not, man. Just the guitar work alone on this stuff is not hair metal. It's definitely metal. I mean, I know they had the look and everything of that time that makes it easy to say hair metal, but nah, it's definitely more of a metal album in my eyes.
Yeah, this one was also my number 9. I was not a fan of it. It had kind of a ballady tone to it, but it wasn't overwhelming. Like when it first started, I didn't expect it to be a ballad. Like I
Right.
knew it was coming, and then like it kind of panned out that way, and I was like, well, that was interesting how they did that, because it's a ballad, but it's not a ballad at the same time. Like it's not like a common 80s ballad like what everybody does, you know.
Right.
But the way that the chorus was weird to me for some reason. It just, I don't know, it just hit me in a weird way. And then again, like the first 2 songs, it ended the same way with the fade out and the solo, and it was just like, are we gonna like change it up at all, or is it gonna be every single song that does this? So it was kind of, I wasn't. It just didn't do it for me.
Right. And for those listening that maybe don't know the album yet, I mean, definitely, we don't mean ballad is like, oh, it's the slow, you know, drawn out. But it's definitely, it just has those elements in there as far as, you know, the vocals and, you know, parts of the music. So
it was interesting the way that they did that. It was like a metal turned ballad.
Yeah.
A metal, basically, is what it was.
And you're right. In the 80s with metal and hair metal, especially in 86, that was always the theme. You know, you look at all these big albums from the 80s like that, they all tend to have a ballad. I mean, you know, they release compilation CDs, like 2 discs full that are like all these 80s, you know, and they were all big hits. But it definitely doesn't go that far into that kind of stuff. But so to say it's the ballad of the song is still like, it's almost like saying South of Heaven by Slayer is the ballad on that song. I mean, or that album. I mean, it's still, you know.
Yeah.
If this album had a true ballad, nobody would attach the word ballad to the song No Substitute. I think it's the closest thing to it.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know what? This is my number 1, and let me explain why. It's because of that. Because it was the most different from what you would expect. I even listed, it's a nice way to almost do a ballad. It kind of has that feel without being soft at all. I love Vinnie's clean guitar tone, the way it layers on top of his distortion tone. Made it really interesting. I'll spoil a little bit of my overall feeling for the album to say that none of the songs on this jumped out at me.
Yeah.
Not a single one came out and was like, wow, that one. So this one was my number 1 just because it was the most, oh wow, that's interesting.
Right.
Here's a black so I need to plug it in.
All right, next up is Animud. This is my number 1. Really dig the part of the song where the vocals stop and it's just the band jamming out. Very cool riff and a groove to it. Of course, more insane shredding from the Vin man. I could just picture in my head, you know, and especially after you mentioned the tour they did on this, I could just picture, you know, the crowd pumping their fists in that 80s fashion, you know, like they did. And then, good Lord, just when you thought this song's about over, everything drops out and Vinnie just goes off. I mean, again, just absolutely nuts. And I know I said and Shoot You Full of Love that, you know, maybe my favorite or best solo, but this one's like right there too, man. He just goes insane. And then, of course, you know, they have the big ending, you know, full band comes back in to end it all. So, yeah, that was, you know, and I agree with what you said, Luke, with the last song. Like, there's really not much on here either that, like, whoa, like that is, you know, but this is probably like the second occasion of the whole album that does do that, and it's kind of sad to say that, but that's just being honest.
This one was my number 3. All around, it was pretty cool. I liked it. The chorus was really cool, but I liked that in the middle, that like all at once it was the main vocals and then the background vocals and then the solo all kind of like intermixing, but you could hear them all individually. They weren't like melting into one another, and it was like a jumbled mess. You could clearly hear each one of them, but they meshed really, really well together. It wasn't like you hear it and it just sounds like a big jumble.
Right.
You could hear each individual thing, and it meshed so well together in this song.
Absolutely.
It had a weird ending, though. The ending kind of was odd, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Like, I didn't find myself hating it at all. It just was not what I expected at all.
Yeah. For once, it didn't fade out on the solo.
Right. And that happened a lot on this album. Things that I didn't expect to happen kind of just happened out of the blue, and it was like, whoa. But not in a bad way.
This was number 6 for me. I did really like the guitars in this one. The riffs and the way Vinnie played, even the rhythms, was really cool. The bridge riff was maybe one of my favorite riffs on the whole album. And then, no fade out. No fade out. This is the first song on the album that doesn't fade out, and what a way to do it.
I like how they held out the animal, or the word animal, too. That was really neat how they did that.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When they held it out and did that little, like, vocal thing, however you want to call it. And it wasn't annoying at all. Like, how some songs can get, if they hold stuff out like that, it can kind of get annoying. I really liked it. I was jamming to it.
Yeah. I think if this would have been the album closer, we would have finally had that perfect album closer for once.
Yeah.
Because the way Vinnie goes off, and then it actually has that ending, the big band ending, almost like the end of the show. Of course, it's like that would have been a good spot for the song too.
Perfect send off for, hey, just in case you guys forgot, listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because our next album's coming, and it's not going to be as good. Next up is Twisted. And so this is the last track on side 1. This is my number 4. A really weird intro on this one. We go from, the Vinnie going crazy with the big band, and then all of a sudden we get this a cappella vocal intro, and it kind of keeps repeating the word twisted and has this weird effect on it. Wasn't expecting a whole lot from this song since it closes out side 1, but again, we get kind of another kind of crazy ending, weird guitar effects, kind of a weird drum fill thing going on. I do have to say I like the creative things that are on this album, because again, you just didn't really hear a lot of that type of stuff going on during this time frame in the metal world or hair metal, whatever you want to call it, and coming up with some of these creative ideas for endings and intros and all that stuff. I do have to give them some credit on that. So
this one was my number 5, and I was not a fan of how it started. Like, it was so weird, but it got better. It definitely got better. Like, when the intro was initially over, it was like, oh, okay. I'm glad the whole song isn't like this, because that was weird how they did that.
It got weird.
Yeah, it got weird. It had a solid drum beat through the whole thing, though. I liked it. Like, it kept me tapping,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, though, throughout this whole album so far, because it was my first time hearing it, that it all kind of just, like, they have the same layout, all the songs. The solos kind of sound the same, the choruses are the same, they repeat the words of the titles of the song over and over and over again. So that was kind of like starting to like grate on me a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a bad song at all. It just, I felt like I had already heard it.
Right.
Essentially. Like, it didn't really stand out to me. So it's kind of just like in the middle for me. Not bad, but not great.
Yeah.
One of them kind of things.
Yeah, that's kind of where I feel like this album trails off to, is it's like, kind of like not bad, but in the middle. Like,
Yes.
I feel like it kind of starts going that way for the most part.
Yeah.
I really wish that Animal and Twisted hadn't been next to each other.
Yeah.
This one is my number 10, and very similar to why Substitute was my number 1. It's just the only song on the album. I don't know that I really felt that much worse about this one than a lot of the others. I felt like this one had some wasted potential. First of all, I would have liked that beginning if it wasn't practically the same idea as the beginning of Animal.
Yeah.
They're just a little too similar. And then I feel like it should have been faster. If it would have been more upbeat, and if there was a little bit of double bass drum at the end, and I wish that would have been even maybe throughout the whole thing. I think this could have been my number 1 almost.
Wow.
That if they had just done it faster and more frantic, and it would have been a really cool thing. And then I wish Bobby had done more of that double bass, or I even noted maybe I wish Vinnie had let him do more of that.
Yeah.
True.
That ending is just super weird. Cool that it ended side 1 like that, but it's weird.
Yeah, I agree. It's like they do kind of clash, because again, with the way the one ends and then the other one starts, it's kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, Luke, I have a question for you.
Oh,
Do you want to make love?
of course.
So that is our
Tic Tacs we can crush up too.
All right. Party up in here.
So that is our next track, by the way, and that is my number 7. So side 2 opens up with a noticeably different drum sound. Kind of sounds more like an electronic kit. Kind of, I don't know. It's almost like poppy in a way, like the beat to it, and I don't know. No secret what this song's about. Obviously, it's one for the ladies.
Was that it? All right.
Yeah, that was it. It starts getting a little thin from here on.
This was my number 2. And I always, whenever we do these, I have Luke read the titles to me and I write them down because I write all my notes out. And when he told me this one, I thought, well, there's the ballad. I thought for sure this was going to be a ballad, and then it was not at all. And I was surprised by it like that. I like that a lot. That I thought for sure this one was going to be the ballad, and it was not.
Right.
All around, the whole song I felt was solid. The drums and the vocals, the background, the bass, they were all solid. They were all together. I felt like it was nice that it picked up after what Twisted happened, like, because it felt like Twisted was kind of bland and it was kind of like fading out for me. And then this one, I felt like it brought it back up where it needed to be for me personally. I was kind of like glad that it wasn't a ballad. Like, I was excited about that because I thought for sure it was going to be the ballad.
Yeah.
When he told me that, I was like, okay.
Then you found yourself dancing on the table, and Luke was twerking on the piano. And
Right, yeah.
what kind of ballad is this?
He was in booty shorts. It was crazy.
Weird. Number 9 for me. Whereas I felt like the last one should have been way faster, I actually feel like this one would have benefited from being slower.
So it should have been a ballad.
Yeah, almost. The chorus vocals especially give me a big Def Leppard vibe. I could almost see this being a good Def Leppard song, but they would have done it slower, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And more electronic-y.
Exactly, yeah. I had to note that I was very glad that it did not fade out.
You know what? Maybe that's kind of the sound they were going for. Maybe that's why the drums were a bit electronic sounding, and maybe they were trying to go a little bit towards that Def Leppard sound. Next up, we have Back on the Streets. This is my number 8. I know this is kind of like the other, single, and people like this. I don't know, man. Kind of a laid-back song for this one. A little bluesy in a way, which is weird to say, but as far as the drum and bass goes, Definitely a little bluesy. I'm not sure why I noted this, but because it kind of counts for every song, but there's a lot of soloing going on underneath the vocals throughout the whole entire song. So, yeah, again, it was just the whole case of just things kind of starting to blend together and not really, catching my attention as much anymore.
This one was my number one. I loved it from start to finish. When he started singing, I asked Luke, I said, is this the same singer? Because it did not, that deep, when he went deeper, I liked that. Like, I loved that. He kind of reminded me of David Coverdale from Whitesnake when he sings lower.
I thought he was going to say Barry White.
No, not quite that deep. And I kind of like that it was like that through the whole song. He went high at certain parts, but for the most part, he kept it at that lower volume, and I liked that a lot. And the solo in this song was my favorite one on the whole album. It was one of the only ones that stood out to me, like really stood out to me. And then the snare had like this echo effect on it. I'm not sure exactly what how they get that to do that, but I liked that a lot because it stood out. And then I wish it wouldn't have faded out though. This was kind of one that I wish would have just like had a solid ending to it, and it would have been like perfect. I think if it would have had a real solid ending to it.
I think I need to give it another listen, just to see, and maybe watch the video too. But
yeah, I'm gonna watch the video because I want to. I know this is my favorite song on the album, so I want to know what the video is like.
Number 5 for me. Wow, just like she said, I wish Robert Flesh would have sang more like this throughout the rest of the album, where he goes up into that high register when it's powerful, but his mid-range voice is so good. It sounded really good. On the other hand, though, I personally felt like this is the one where he should not have gone absolutely nuts on the solo. I felt like the solo was way too shreddy.
Probably liked it. I don't like shreddy solos.
I do normally, but this one felt like it should have had something a little more, feeling,
Shreddy Krueger.
Yeah.
Shreddy Krueger.
Next is I Want to Be Your Victim. This is my number 6. The title of this makes me feel like it should have been a Gene Simmons song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got to say at this point, and again, I'm not really saying that these songs aren't really good, but it's just that I'm getting kind of bored with the songs by now. Nothing's really shining again, and at least me, I get kind of tired of hearing Vinnie soloing throughout the whole song, track after track. I immediately started thinking of, the kind of modern day band Dragon Force. It's like, I saw those guys live, their whole gimmick with their shredding, and, after like 2 songs, I was already bored because it's the same thing throughout every song, and that's kind of the vibe I was starting to get with this.
Yep, this one is my number 7 for that reason. It's not a bad song, but it's just more of the same of what we've already heard.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it would have probably been higher if not all the other songs had already kind of sounded like this one.
Right.
Because it's a good song, but it just kind of blended with everything else, and it just kind of sounds like everything else on the album. It didn't really stand out at all to me. It was just kind of there.
Yeah.
Like, it's all right, but
yeah, like maybe if this was like a single, like a 45 or whatever, and I hadn't heard the whole album, and then this is the first song I hear, maybe that'd be a whole different, feeling about it. But at this point of the album, it's just kind of like, okay.
Number 8 for me. And that bass and drums intro, that was a cool way to start, and I wish they had let it go on longer. I was typing sweet bass and drums intro, and then Vinnie comes in, and I'm like, I don't know if it counts as a bass and drums intro now, But I noted too, especially at this point, I was getting tired of the background vocals singing the song title and the lead vocals singing over top of it. Every song, that's what it was. One thing that perked me up, though, right near the end, the bass just disappears. For a little while, right near the end of the song, maybe even for like an entire chorus, there's no bass guitar. And then he just comes back in like it didn't happen. I wonder if it was on purpose or if somebody accidentally recorded over it or what happened, because it feels completely arbitrary. I don't know why they would have done that on purpose.
Then he probably took it out later.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah. I didn't like that note.
Get rid of the whole chorus.
You can't
Delete.
Delete.
Do it.
Control Alt Delete.
You lose. He's got this like unusually long finger hitting. Delete.
Oh, that's creepy. I just imagined him with like ET fingers.
Him shredding.
Oh no! Ew.
Ouch.
Oh, that's creepy.
Oh, speaking of creepy, next we have Baby O.
Oh.
God, this is my number 10. I said, what the hell is this? Forget what I said in the last song. This song sucks. I really hope this album ends well.
Yeah, this was my number 10. I was okay until that chorus hit, and then I was like, what even is this? Like, I turned around at Luke, and I was just like, what are we listening to? Like,
then, like,
not okay.
and then, like, the end where it's like, baby, I'm on fire for you. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, how cheesy.
For me, so far off, I couldn't help laughing, and I can't take it serious.
You're a double barrel cardiac arrest.
Yeah, I can't. Like, who writes that? They had to have been drunk.
Hot little strutter, wild bitch in heat.
Oh my God. No.
Oh, man.
So bad.
Pull the trigger, pistol whip me with your pleasure gun.
Oh
Let
my-
your honey drip down on me.
Ew. It's so wrong.
That's another one that just is up there for cheesiest lyrics.
Yes.
This one was 7 for me. Yeah, that chorus threw me off. But at the beginning of the song, the riff comes in, and I'm thinking Van Halen.
Really?
Something about that riff was giving me a Van Halen vibe. The way he was playing it and the way he was kind of playing with the whammy bar while he was doing. And on top of that, honestly, I think this one might have had my favorite guitar solo for all of it. But then I wished he had stopped, because when he keeps going throughout the last choruses, it made an already bad chorus already, like, just flat out annoying.
I have to agree.
Kind of have like a David Lee Roth quality when he's really high sometimes.
You think?
I mean, not annoying, because David Lee Roth can be annoying sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of whiny, but just the notes he can hit and stuff kind of remind me of it a little bit.
Yeah, I think Fleischman's a better vocalist.
Oh, I do too,
Shots-
by far, yes.
Shots fired, I'll say I don't like David Lee Roth at all.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
You're
just kind of reminded me of it a little bit, just the style and the way he would sing certain things. Because David Lee Roth has that, where he hits the notes really, really high up there,
well, it's funny you mentioned David Lee Roth, because we will be talking about him in a little bit.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
So we come to the last track of the album, Invasion. This is my number 3. So we do get a pretty decent album closer. So the vinyl version does this cool thing, or maybe annoying, depending on how you look at it.
The second one.
where the end of the song, where it just goes into that guitar loop and the hi-hat thing going. It's kind of a sort of a locked groove, so it just constantly repeats as it very slowly, like slower. Somehow they did this to where it goes slower than the normal grooves, but it slowly moves to the end of the album. Or you almost rip your ears off and you decide to take the needle off yourself before it gets to that.
Yeah.
But so other than that, yeah, I thought it was a pretty nice album closer though.
This one was my number 8, and the ending is why it's so low on my list. When it first started, the guitar in the beginning sounded like the Eye of the Tiger riff. It reminded me of the Eye of the Tiger riff. But it was cool how it like changed in the middle to like a completely new riff. It was almost like a new song all of a sudden. So that was really neat. The chorus of this one was really cool. I like the chorus of this one a lot. And the bass sounded solid. It was heavy. It was solid and heavy. But that ending, I can't. I don't think it would have been so bad if it would have just gone just a couple of times and then ended. But it just kept going, and I'm like, okay, I can't. Like, again, wish this album would have just had a solid close. Like, I'm disappointed again with the ending.
I figured it was going to be, it's going to go for a few times and then it's just going to kind of fade out. Typical. That'd be fine, and then it just keeps going.
Minutes. It never.
Yeah. I think that's going to be my new alarm on my phone.
Oh no!
That'd wake you up.
Just blare it out of surround sound.
This was my number 4. Yeah, I was not expecting the full song to come in the way it did. From the intro, I figured it was going to be a crazy fast rocker, which personally I feel like was desperately missing from this album, was the crazy fast rocker. Yeah. But no, I really liked the chorus a lot, just like you said. I wish it wasn't the same formula as all the others, where the background vocals are singing Invasion while Robert Fleischman sings stuff over top of it, but it is catchy.
Yeah.
Really did not like that ending. I knew because of Wikipedia that looping thing was going to happen.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for how annoying it was.
That takes us to the end of the album. So, overall, I don't know, like, I'm almost surprised at myself that I gave it this, but I gave it a 6. So, of course, this was Vinnie's kind of, here's what I can do, I'll show them type of record for Kiss fans. Again, great production, although the guitar is a bit loud in the mix. Big surprise there. Boys Are Gonna Rock, of course, the big song that all Kiss fans know, and it's the song you probably think of when you hear the name Vinnie Vincent Invasion. Again, it had a cool video for it. Give the album a listen if you've never heard before. And again, I just I want to say this, and no, we weren't paid or asked to promote it, but check out Bobby Rock's book. It gives a lot of great insight to the world of VVI. It's a great read. Unfortunately, I've already boxed it and put it in storage. Otherwise, I'd be able to show it. But it's a great read. Look it up. It's not one of those super long books. It's very easy to get through, and it's hard to put down. So.
Overall, I gave this one a 4 out of 10, and overall, I was just disappointed because Vinnie is one of my favorite Kiss guitarists.
Mm-hmm.
I like him so much, and I don't know, I don't feel like there was enough variety. All the songs had the same layout, essentially, and it just felt flat.
Yeah.
The solos sounded a lot like the same to me. And that may just be because I'm not really a musician, so I don't really know, to listen for the differences in the notes and stuff. Mm-hmm. So for me, it kind of just blended together. It didn't, except for the one that stood out to me was the one that was in Back in the Streets, which was my favorite one on the whole album. And then, the bass was probably my favorite thing about the whole album because you could actually hear it. That was probably overall my favorite thing about this album was the bass because you could actually hear it. And I liked it was groovy at points and rocking at other points. And, you could tell it was there. And, there's just so many bands that just bury it.
Yeah.
It's a very important instrument.
It is. There's a lot of bands very well known for their bass.
Yes. And overall, though, it just wasn't what I had hoped it was going to be. I had hoped that it was going to be a lot better than it was. It wasn't horrible at all. And I feel like if all the songs were on different albums, they were just, this album had, Invasion on it, and then this album had Twisted on it, and then this, and they all were different, I'd like them a lot more, but because they were all grouped together and they all just kind of sounded the same, I was disappointed. I was hoping it was going to be better.
Right.
But it wasn't bad at all.
Yep. I gave this one a 5. I had to go middle of the road just because I really I couldn't decide either way. I honestly couldn't decide whether this is an album I would listen to again or not. Another confusing one. It's definitely continued the trend of albums not being what I expected overall. As far as generalities are concerned, it's definitely exactly what I thought it was going to be. 80s heavy metal with ridiculous guitar solos. I did expect the songwriting and production to be a little bit better, though. I was a bit disappointed in both of those things. Every single song was the intro, verse, chorus, solo chorus. Every song had the background vocals singing the title of the chorus with the lead vocal singing over top of it.
Yep.
Every solo was completely, astronomically crazy, good, but every single one of them was like that.
Yeah.
Really?
Do what?
Sorry. Really, the songwriting was guitar solo and then write stuff around that.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of most of the vocals throughout the album. Robert Fleischman reminded me of Robert Plant a little too much, and to each their own. Never been a big Zeppelin fan. I know we've talked about that before, so to me it didn't fit super great with a lot of the songs. Having said that, though, I can absolutely appreciate and respect the power, the range, and the ease with which he sang these songs. Even the crazy high notes, they didn't sound strained. They were perfectly on pitch. I wouldn't ever say that this guy is a bad vocalist. Just personally not my thing.
Oh, yeah.
I loved that you could clearly hear the bass throughout the whole album. I wasn't a massive fan of some of the production techniques, but at least you could hear the bass.
Yes.
Probably helps that Dana Strum co-produced the album. But just like you said, his playing and his tone was just great all throughout the album. I know Bobby Rock is capable of more than what we heard on this. He's such a great drummer, and I can only assume that Vinnie was being a super stickler on what was played and where.
Yeah.
Now, the parts he played were very well played. They fit the songs, but I wish that he had let loose, or I wish that he had been allowed to let loose a little more.
Yeah.
And then Vinnie, I both loved and hated these leads throughout.
Yeah.
On one hand, the talent level that kind of stuff takes is astronomical. Most guitarists, me included, will go their whole career without ever coming even close to the skill level it takes to play like that. Nobody could possibly deny the level of hard work, patience, sacrifice of the rest of your entire life it takes to get that good at playing that fast and clean. You didn't hear him just kind of slopping around.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, nobody plays like Vinnie. The scales he uses are completely unique to him. You know immediately that that's Vinnie Vincent playing. The only thing that I didn't really like was that it was just too much every time there was a solo.
Yeah.
Every single solo was...
Yeah.
And then again, the mix, they were too loud. Sometimes it almost hurt. Sometimes, and they just buried what was going on the rest of the time.
Yeah.
It almost gave me an early Dave Mustaine vibe. Not really in play style, but just that, like, he was putting up a big middle finger to Kiss, trying to prove to them he didn't need them to be good at what he does. And to be fair, he was absolutely right. But I kind of hope he calms down a little bit by the time we get to the next Invasion album, because I could really use a nice, feeling solo. Something like I Still Love You comes to mind.
Yeah.
Clearly him, it still has his unique little bits, but it's not just completely wild. You feel that. At least here and there, a couple of solos,
I think that's probably why it kind of just, was all the same to me, because as good as they were just, it was like him trying to just go as hard as he could every single time. And solos don't have to be like that.
Right.
A solo can be great just being a simple, just a run. Like, it doesn't have to be this hard-hitting, every single time. Like, it can be a subtle thing and still be great. Yeah. And for him, for me, it just felt like he was, every time. Like, it was like, okay, all right.
And that's one reason why, as much as he wanted to be Randy Rhoads, he wasn't Randy Rhoads.
Yes.
Because the stuff Randy Rhoads did was just, his solos would sing to you and give you goosebumps,
He knew when to shred and when to let a note hold.
Right.
Which is a big thing. I honestly wonder if that's where Gene got that from. He talks about that in the which home
Extreme Close-Up. I was getting ready to mention. Yeah, I was getting ready to mention that because I started getting that vision as I was listening to all them solos too. I'm like, yep, it's like Gene talked about. It sounds like a bunch of anchor bees. Shut up.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what. But again, I feel like it's worth stating all that stuff that I said about how the talent level it takes to do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to say bad things about it just because of that.
Yes.
That guy dedicated time we couldn't imagine to do that, and it's a
Yeah.
nobody else has. But
Oh yeah. I mean, it's easy to sit and crack jokes like that, but hey, when it comes down to it, yeah, he's a phenomenal player. The time, there's definitely some highlights that the stuff he did with Kiss, and we obviously know what he helped them write on Revenge and whatnot too, for that matter. So he's definitely got the talent, and he's got a good singing voice too, for that matter. We just never really get to hear it. So since you asked, I would think that to be honest, when I think about it, I kind of like the first Black and Blue and Nasty Nasty. I think I like those albums a little better than this, to be honest.
Yeah.
Since you asked.
exactly. Yeah. I think I wish for something different with this same feel, and that makes me look forward to All Systems Go, while still being a little bit let down by this.
Yeah. See, me, I'm kind of coming at that again with little bits of memories from the last time I heard it, where I'm sort of like, this one again. But again, I'm kind of hoping to be pleasantly shocked or proven wrong by what I thought I remembered last time. So
yeah, I would be very glad for that. All right. Well, luckily, while I was reading you all that novel, I've also figured up all of the placings already. So
sweet.
All right. This one has ended up with a 5.2 out of 10 average overall ranking. That does put it, ties it with Michael Bolton's Everybody's Crazy.
Huh.
Puts it a little bit above Without Love, and quite a bit below both 7 Star and Nasty Nasty. Probably about mid-range on our overall list so far.
Sounds about right.
Yep. We did have a couple of ties. Neither one of them were important, but still, get in there, let us know what your votes are so we can break those up. Dead last place for this album is 8th place because of those ties. And anybody want to take a guess?
Baby-O.
You got it!
Sorry, Rochelle.
Yes, this one ended up with 40 points, which was by far the most. You guys and Steve all put it at 10. I gave it a 7, and Rochelle gave it a 3. So it didn't equal out there very well.
Yeah.
In 7th place, I Want to Be Your Victim. Tied for 6th place, Shoot You Full of Love and No Substitute. In 5th place, Do You Want to Make Love? In 4th place, tied in 4th place, Twisted and Invasion. And our top 3 for this album, in 3rd place, Animal. In 2nd place, Boys Are Gonna Rock. And our 1st place, Back on the Streets.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
I can tell you that if this had been one of those episodes where we hadn't gotten anybody to vote and it had just been me and you, that song would have been almost last.
Yeah. What was number 3 again?
Animal.
Animal, yes.
Okay, all right. At least that's in there. So next week's album, which is one I'm really looking forward to because I've never heard it myself, is White Tiger. Of course, Mark St. John. It's what our one and only time to get to talk about him and really showcase and spotlight him. Of course, a lot of people should know. If you don't know, he was a very short-lived guitarist in Kiss during the Animalized era. Unfortunately, due to some health issues, like with his wrist and hands, he was forced to leave, and that's when Bruce Kulick came in. But I've always heard about this album for years, and just one of them things where I've never had the chance to sit and listen to it, or I've definitely never seen it, physical form to, purchase it. But looking forward to checking it out. So yes, again, White Tiger, Mark St. John, next week's album. Get all your votes in for all that stuff. So kind of switching complete gears again, something that I had forgot to mention. That was the other big piece of news, and the name got brought up, David Lee Roth. It was announced that David Lee Roth is going to be the opener for Kiss on this new leg of the U.S. tour that's coming up. I guess we know probably how you feel, but I'm personally excited.
I'm excited to see what songs he plays.
Yeah.
He might play from his solo career versus if he does any Van Halen songs, and then naturally, if you see a professional band covering Van Halen, I'm going to be very curious to see how the guitarist handles that.
Right. Because it's just like with Sammy Hagar's band, and they do their Van Halen tracks, and that guitar player, what's his name, Vic or something, he does a pretty good job. So I'm curious to see who's going to play with David. I know there was like a little rehearsal video that got leaked out, but I couldn't really tell who any of the guys were, if they were anyone of, any name, fame or anything. I thought, how cool would it be if he was able to hook up with Steve Vai again, but I doubt that's going to happen. So obviously, I would have much rather had been Van Halen themselves to play with Kiss. That was always one of my dream, concerts. I wish they would have toured together, and because I love Van Halen right up there almost as much as I love Kiss, and thankfully got to see them back in 2012 with David Lee Roth. So I thought he sounded fine then. David Lee Roth's David Lee Roth. He sings everything different nowadays, just like Robert Plant did. Even in the 70s, he was singing things different, but that's how David Lee Roth kind of does it now. I'm excited because, hey, at least we're going to get to hear the Van Halen music, even if it ain't the actual band, but at least we'll get to hear them and his voice singing those classics, and of course, stuff from his solo career. So, because he had a lot of songs I loved from his solo career too, that brings back memories of childhood. So, definitely very excited to see that. And the Painter was one thing, but I'd much rather hear some music before Kiss. And if it's some Van Halen, David Lee Roth music, I'm definitely 100% in for that. So.
Oh my God.
Huh?
My dad is a huge Van Halen fan. We'll have to make sure we tell him about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like Kirby Van status, kind of.
Really?
Yes.
Nice.
He used to have a guitar that he put white tape on. Like, yeah. The whole 9 yards. Yep.
Yeah. Just like Kiss, man, Van Halen's one of them bands from childhood that, I grew up, I've, playing along with them on the drums too. And I remember the cassette version of 1984 I played it so much that it broke. And I remember watching MTV for the Jump video. I always loved the Jump video, and waiting for it to come on. And of course, all their other classic videos that they made. And just, of course, Alex Van Halen was always one of my favorite drummers, one of my influences, and his drum sound, I still don't know to this day how he gets it on, his toms and his snare, and just such a unique sound. And and of course Eddie speaks for himself, and Michael Anthony and his background vocals. But I've got good faith that they're going to do their songs justice. Whoever David Lee Roth brings with him. So yeah, I am, it's not until September that they come in this area. Kind of not in a hurry for that time frame yet, but at the same time, I'm kind of anxious now. So, but thankfully we'll have other things to keep us busy before then, like the Kiss Expo and all that stuff. So, I don't know. I know. You kind of mentioned, Luke, like what you felt about him earlier, but what do you really think?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. There are a lot of different fan bases that I hate being on one side of, The Metallica Megadeth thing comes to mind, and I've always been personally a bigger Megadeth fan, but I still love Metallica, and I hate that there's all these breaks, but the Sammy Hagar, David Lee Roth thing is another one of those, but I just can't say the same. I like the David Lee Roth songs that were big hits. Of course, I've got that DVD of Van Halen music videos that's just from throughout the whole career.
Yeah.
Like all of those David Lee Roth songs just fine. Jump, Panama, Ain't Talking About Love, all the good old stuff, but it's Sammy Hagar any day for me. And I always felt like the sort of forgotten tracks from the David Lee Roth albums, I personally feel, are way worse songs than the forgotten tracks from the Sammy Hagar albums.
Hmm.
And then, of course, Van Halen 3 is just, we can make that album happen.
Yeah. I love Gary Sharon's voice, but just didn't work with Van Halen. And, there's a lot of, I guess you can sort of say deep cuts from the Van Halen, David Lee Roth stuff that, to me, some of that stuff is better than the hits, And I've always been, again, kind of like in the same vein with Kiss. I've always liked Van Halen, period. Not this guy over this guy or this lineup over this lineup, period. Van Halen, the music in general. I cannot stand the people that use that Van Hagar term for the Sammy years. That makes no sense at all, because David Lee Roth's last name is not Van Halen, so why it makes, what I mean? It makes no sense to suddenly call it Van Hagar when it's still Eddie and Alex in the van. That stuff's asinine to me. I've never been able to stomach that, and I love so many Sammy songs just as much as I love David's songs. I mean, just in general, I just love Van Halen in general. Like, their sound is what does it. So, yeah, I mean, that's really all it is for me. I'm super excited. I need to find a shirt that's like half Van Halen, half Kiss to wear to that show. All right, well, we're kind of rambling. This episode's starting to get a little long, like our polls. So we're going to get out of here, wrap this one up. Again, thank you all for your support. Keep on, putting those votes in on the song polls and everything else. You guys know the drill. Keep spreading the word and get those votes in for White Tiger. And again, let us know if you guys got any cool Christmas presents. We'd love to hear what you got. Share them. And let us know your guys' thoughts, too, about David Lee Roth opening for Kiss. I know there's been tons of critics already, so that's always going to happen. But we're curious to know what you guys think about it. So, all right. So, again, until next week for the White Tiger album, we will see you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.